Over here in the UK, we have the term doing a Ratner, ascertaining to millionaire jewellery store owner Gerald Ratner, who joked at an event that everything he sold was crap. His comment instantly lost £500 million from the company, with every store in the country shutting down within the next 6 months. The world's most expensive joke. Now, suicidal statements aren't just exclusive to the world of jewellery. Oh no! The video game industry has also had its fair share of statements that have doomed many a console. Surprisingly, none of which have ever fallen out of the cake-hole of problematic Pete. So, this episode, we take a look at these asinine assertions, these simple-minded statements, and these deranged declarations. As I say, but hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome you to Fact Hunt. 5 idiotic quotes that instantly destroyed a console. The Atari Jaguar was Atari's final attempt at staying in the gaming business. Proudly boasting at gamers to do the math, the console towered over the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo at the time with its alleged 64-bit power. However, you didn't need to be a mathematician to see Atari were clearly fudging the numbers. In truth, for a machine that claimed to be 64-bit, it was barely able to keep up with its 16-bit counterparts, and the Jaguar was laughable when compared to the imminently upcoming Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation. Retailers thought the system was a waste of time, the public thought the machine was a joke, and the gaming media thought the Jaguar was dead in the water. Luckily, the House of Tramiel were fully aware of the mounting resentment towards their machine, so they hatched a cunning plan. They sent Atari CEO Sam Tramiel to give an interview with Edge Magazine's American cousin, Next Generation. Armed with only a pair of badly fitting trousers and a vomit-inducing yellow tie, Sam went to work in dealing with a giant backlash towards the Jaguar. And, as you could probably guess from its inclusion in this video, the entire interview was a complete and utter dumpster fire. However, I'm going to get a bit Inception-y here and present you with a top 5 stupid things said within a list video about top 5 stupid things being said. In at 5th place, during an interview where Sam is desperately trying to sell people on the Atari Jaguar at a time everyone already thinks the console is absurd, Sam tells the magazine that the Jaguar 2 is only 2 years away. No point buying this console, we're dumping it for a better one in a few months' time. In at number 4 is Sam claiming that almost 100% of all Commodore 64 owners bought the floppy disk drive. And it's that completely made up fact which is the basis of their amazing sales projection for the Jaguar CD add-on. Number 3, and we have a right corker of an entry. Sam says that if Sony tries to sell the PlayStation hardware cheap, Atari will sue. Even though in the same interview, Sam admits that Atari also sell the Jaguar for less than cost and makes its money selling games. Rules for thee, but not for me. The second place quote from this interview is one that'll blow your mind. And remember, this is the CEO of Atari during the Jaguar era saying this. I don't think Nintendo is known as a great hardware company. When have they ever come out with great technology? Seriously, Sam? And at number 1, during the interview where Sam is trying his hardest to make the Jaguar look good, he says that the PlayStation is actually more powerful. Well, if that doesn't sell you on a Jaguar, I don't know what will. So, in conclusion, we come out of this fascinating insight with there's 0 point buying the Jaguar now, as a better model is already on the horizon. Facts pulled out of Sam's arse equal great sales for add-ons. Atari are massive hypocrites when it comes to sales tactics. Sam has never seen a Nintendo system in his life, and that rival systems are vastly superior to anything Atari can hope to output in general. Needless to say, Sam was out of a job less than 12 months later. Can't imagine why. Fact Hunt viewers outside of the UK, or under the age of about 30, may have never heard of the Amstrad GX4000 console. Well, to bring you up to speed, it was basically a repackaged version of the Amstrad CPC home microcomputer, and it was released in the UK during 1990, just in time for Sega to curb stomp it out of existence. But even if it hadn't been released during Sega's sudden explosion of popularity in the UK, who in their right mind was going to buy this thing? Even though its specification meant it was more powerful than its home computer cousin, because of its close compatibility, all third parties bothered doing was converting their existing CPC tape-based titles onto the GX4000 cartridge format, as charging 30 quid for a 2-year-old game that was going for £3 by then is a bargain by anyone's definition. And guess who wanted to buy a console whose entire library is just more expensive versions of games they could already buy for pocket change? No one. Outside of the few Alan Sugar fanboys who had escaped from the mental institution long enough for their carers to realise they were missing, no one was going to buy what was essentially a gimped CPC with overpriced games. The 80s home microcomputers were really showing their age by this time and had been outclassed by 16-bit offerings from the Atari ST and the Commodore Amiga. And for users looking to get into home console gaming, Sega's very affordable Master System had such a strong grip on the UK market, even Nintendo's NES was being outsold 4-1. So, with the public fully aware the Mega Drive was also just around the corner, no one in their right mind was going to buy Alan's box of crap. Amstrad's machine utterly bombed in sales, and showed that you couldn't dress a pig up like a pony and expect the game's playing public not to notice. So, you would have thought that Amstrad would have learnt that trying to pull the wool over people's eyes doesn't end well. And after a few years, everyone involved could just admit that the whole thing was just a bad idea. Nope! Cliff Lawson was a long-time employer at Amstrad. He was a key member of the team that launched the GX4000, and he was still there in January 2005 when he gave an interview to Retro Gamer magazine. And it's in this interview that Cliff says something so stupid, it's almost unfathomable. Now, bearing in mind, throughout this entire section, you've been watching footage of GX4000 games, so you've got an idea of what this machine is like in the graphics department. Well, Cliff said this: "The GX4000 arrived in the same era as the Nintendo SNES, and technically the Amstrad was at least as good." You what? Cliff, there is nothing about the GX4000 that's even remotely close to being as good as a SNES. It's this sort of insanity that led you to spend so much money on marketing this brick that you literally would have saved money giving everyone who bought the console a refund, every single game ever released, and £1,000 spending money. I mean, seriously, that's how much money they wasted on this thing. Back in 1995, Microsoft were purely focused on money. Sorry, I mean Windows for PC. And the Xbox brand was not even a glint in the eyes of Bill Gates. Also, unlike today, Windows was not known for being a particularly good platform for playing games. Although some rather hardline Linux users may argue that still holds true. Most PC games in this time period were played with the user exiting out of Windows altogether and loading them manually through DOS. The evidence of Windows' ineptitude to play games during this era can be seen by the mere fact that DOSBox exists. Windows was extremely resource heavy, and while running didn't leave most computers with enough horsepower left to run anything more demanding than Chip's Challenge, whereas DOS was lightweight and didn't drink up all the CPU runtime. Actually, even as I write this, I've only got Word open and somehow 37% of my 16GB of RAM is being used. So maybe those Linux lunatics are onto something. Anyway, Microsoft wanted to shake this off with the release of its brand new operating system, Windows 95. So, to further drive this message home, Microsoft put on a show called the Windows 95 Games Launch to show PC game developers just how much effort they were going to make sure Windows 95 took the place of DOS as a method for running games on PC. And to show they meant business, Bill Gates superimposed himself into a scene from the new Windows 95 version of Doom. Armed with only a shotgun and clearly someone else's trench coat, Bill delivered his vision for gaming on how he believed Microsoft Windows was the best platform for gaming. Now, we all know about a decade later, Microsoft will release the Xbox as a way to break into the console market and stop Sony from completely running away with the whole thing. Now, Microsoft wouldn't release the Xbox if they didn't want you to buy it. However, during the Windows 95 game launch show, Microsoft had a different message, and that was, don't buy a console. Yep, just 10 years prior to the Xbox, the same company were telling gamers not to spend their money on a games console and just buy Windows instead. Their argument was that the PlayStation cost £300, yet a Windows 95 upgrade was just £70. So it was obvious you should just get their operating system. Of course, this didn't include the £300 you need to spend on a 3DFX card to actually be able to play new 3D games. And it definitely didn't include the cost of a new Intel Pentium Pro CPU, which cost anywhere between £500 to £1,000 at the time. So this all may seem like a huge expense, but don't worry. Microsoft is all about giving the customer value for money. So in this same report where Microsoft are advising you not to buy a console, they're also letting everyone know that they're releasing a CD that contains 20 demos of new Windows 95 games. And all for only £10. What a bargain! There were a lot of things Sega could have done better with a Saturn. For instance, why didn't they equip it with better 3D polygon capabilities, when at the time they were leading the way in 3D polygonal arcade games? I mean, how did that even happen? The company that literally invented the first 3D fighting game with Virtua Fighter didn't even think about building their console around this tech. They could have not botched a release outside of Japan and had enough units ready to sell and not leave half the retailers fuming with anger, thus leaving Sony to swallow up most of the in-store shelf spaces. Instead of taking the hottest arcade racing game of the moment and turning it into a jerky pop-up nightmare that looked like a joke compared to the PlayStation's Ridge Racer, they could have actually put some damn effort into the Saturn port of Daytona, USA. There are many things Sega could have done better, but even with all these setbacks, it didn't stop the Saturn from having a decent library of games. Or a fantastic library of games if you imported all the really good ones that never left Japan. It's just a shame many people didn't get to play a lot of these releases, because Sony was busy dominating the entire games industry with an unmatchable set of titles for the PlayStation. By 1997, it was clear that Sony was pulling far ahead of Sega as more and more people were choosing their console over the Saturn. Sega needed some luck and a blockbuster title. What Sega didn't need, however, was for then CEO of Sega of America, Bernie Stoller, to say something stupid and give people even less of a reason to pick up the Saturn over the PlayStation. Unfortunately for fans of Sega's out-of-this-world console, that's what they got. When questioned about the Saturn's role in the current marketplace, Bonkers Bernie told the magazine that Saturn is not our future. This was 2 years before the American release of the Sega Dreamcast, So what Bernie did was manage to completely extinguish any interest still left from potential Saturn buyers, while at the same time telling current owners of the machine that their 2-year-old console was on its last legs. Normally, I'd end this section by making a joke about Bernie, but as he passed away recently, I'll leave it alone. Rest in peace, Bernie. I hope you did find out what Streets of Rage was in the end. Finally, we have the biggest screw-up in recent times. The reveal of Microsoft's 2013 console, the Xbox One. Stupid things began before the console was even revealed, when Microsoft employee Adam Orth wrote on Twitter that he didn't understand why people were upset with always-on devices, and told people to deal with it. But maybe Microsoft could have got away with an always-on console in 2013, much in the same way they have gotten away with a metric ton of DRM on the Xbox Series X today, had it not been for the utter disaster that was the Xbox One reveal showcase. First of all, the console looked like it was ready to take on the world of VHS. Phil Spencer came on stage wearing a watch on each wrist. They proudly told everyone the console had 5 billion transistors, even though that means absolutely nothing to anyone, and a new Kinect was paraded around like it was the best thing since sliced bread. However, the biggest innovation for the console was being able to watch The Price is Right on it. And instead of showing any games, they just displayed what the dog would look like in the next Call of Duty game. The pushback from the gaming public was immediate, and in the days and weeks that followed, Microsoft was hit with a deluge of questions about the always-on requirements of the console. Seeing as the machine needed to connect to the internet at least once every 24 hours, many people with unreliable or non-existent internet connections were concerned. One gaming journalist took these concerns straight to the head of Xbox, the man who looks like a used car salesman, Don Matrick. When pressed on the subject of what people should do if they don't have good enough internet to connect every 24 hours, Don gave some sage advice to gamers. Buy an Xbox 360 instead. That's right, don't buy our console, buy our old one instead. But gamers didn't buy 360s. Instead, they bought PlayStation 4s, and then Don left Microsoft to put his expert gaming marketing brain to work at Zynga, the mobile game studio behind such monumental titles like Toy Blast, World of Candy, and Words with Friends 2. Thankfully, Phil Spencer took off one of his watches and has been spending his way back the popularity ever since. Hello you! Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. Click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and until next time friends, I'm missing you already.